Hey everybody, welcome to another video by Break Into Tech Sales. If you don't already know about Break Into Tech Sales, what we do is provide educational resources for anybody who's trying to get a sales job in the tech industry. So if that's interesting to you, if you're thinking about getting into tech sales, even if you've just heard about tech sales and you want to learn more, follow our channel to get more of our videos. Today we're talking about the best tech sales companies to work for in 2023. So first of all, why are we making this video? Why is it important to work for a good company in tech sales? Commonly, especially if you're not in tech sales already, or you just follow tech sales on TikTok, or you've heard about tech sales from other sources, the thing that people always talk about is how much money you can make in tech sales. But it's also important to work for a good company because tech sales is hard enough as it is. You're going to face rejection constantly every day. You have to work really hard to hit your sales quota. So it's no surprise that annual turnover among salespeople is 27%, which is twice what it is for the overall labor force. So if you compound that with also having a company with no work-life balance and toxic culture, that's going to get to you really fast. So it's important that you find a good company to work for if you're going to get into tech sales. In terms of where we got our data that we'll cover on the next 10 or so slides, we cross-referenced these three data sources from Bravado, Glassdoor, and Fortune. In terms of how good the data sources are for our purposes here, Bravado is the best. It's specifically focused on tech sales. It's actually a company that I think was previously CompGauge, and then Bravado bought that company, and I think they're in the process of migrating all the data over. But anyway, the reason the Bravado data set is really good is because, like I already said, it focuses on tech sales companies specifically, but it also takes a really holistic view. It combines data on compensation, quota attainment, quota fairness, work-life balance. These are all things you really want to think about for a tech sales role. The Glassdoor publication does include non-tech companies, but we filtered the data to only include tech companies in the tables you're going to see on the following slides. For the Fortune publication, it's slightly outdated. They haven't released their 2023 list of best workplaces yet, but Fortune does have a subsection for tech companies. And then neither the Glassdoor nor the Fortune publications have lists specifically for tech sales like Bravado does. However, we can assume that these large tech companies definitely have sales roles that you can get. So effectively, they're tech sales companies. So first, let's look at the top 10 in the Bravado data. The list is actually more than 10. We're going to look at the top 25 actually in these slides, and then I'll share where you can go to see the full list of the best companies for tech sales that Bravado publishes. In these top 10 here, there's immediately going to be some names you recognize, like Cisco is a company that's been around for a while. Google, obviously. Box is newer but well known. Slack, acquired by Salesforce recently, obviously well known. SAP, an older company. I think they do ERP software, but of course you're going to recognize some of the names in this top 10 list. Top 20, Splunk is a more recent tech company that's been hot. ServiceNow, New Relic, Segment, Red Hat, PagerDuty, Microsoft. These are some other ones I recognize. And again, with this data, you can see that it's unique because it's going to give you the overall rating for each company, but it's also going to tell you what percentage of reps hit quota, how good is their compensation, how good is their work-life balance. So you can really see how good each company is on a few different variables, and you can prioritize, what's good for you. And then this is, the end of the top 25 list from Bravado. So Smartsheet, Cloudflare, Twilio, Dropbox, these are all names I recognize, and you probably do too. So on to the next data source, Glassdoor. They put out their best places to work in 2023. These are the top 10 large companies, and you'll notice that the ranks aren't just 1 through 10. This is because I went through and found just the tech companies. So it looks like, number 3 and 4 were not tech companies. Number 7 was not tech companies. That's why some of those numbers are missing. but I went through and found all the tech companies in this best places to work list. And you're probably already seeing some companies that are in multiple lists. I think Box, Google, ServiceNow, Microsoft. From Glassdoor, I included the small to medium companies as well. They rank these companies as well. I'm going to describe in a later slide why I don't think it's a great idea if you're just getting into tech sales to go to work for a smaller company. But I thought I'd include these anyway. Some that I recognize here are like Ironclad and Everlaw. I think it's interesting that two kind of like legal tech startups made the top of the list here. Closers.io is some type of sales company. Sprout Social is like a social listing tool. I think Heap does something with data. Branch is obviously insurance. If you look at Fortune next, so again, similar thing to the Glassdoor data set, it breaks down into large and small to medium companies. Cisco is number one. I think this is one that was on another one of the lists. Salesforce, I think NVIDIA was also another one of the list. I've definitely seen HubSpot and Red Hat. So you're starting to see some of these companies that are recurring. And that's why we cross-reference these data sources, because it's one thing for one data source to say that this is a good company, but if you're starting to see it on multiple very reputable lists of the best companies to work for, then it's probably a pretty good company to work for. And if you're trying to break into tech sales, these are the ones that you might want to apply to first if you're prioritizing working for a good company with good culture, etc. Again, like I said, Fortune also has the small to medium section in their list. Something I found interesting about this is Greenhouse, Lattice, and Gem are all like people ops or like HR softwares, which I guess kind of makes sense because maybe companies who build tools for people ops and HR have good culture. I guess that makes sense. But again, I'll talk later about why I think you should stick to large tech companies if this is your first role in tech sales. So as I was saying throughout looking at those companies, there are a few that recur. And so I went through and I kind of control F to find the companies that are in common between those data sets. And these are the 9 tech companies that are in at least 2 of those 3 publications that we just talked through. So Cisco, Box, Google, ServiceNow, Red Hat, Microsoft, NVIDIA, HubSpot, Adobe. I would highly recommend, based on these companies being in multiple best places to work lists, applying to sales roles at these companies. If you're trying to get into tech sales, these are probably great companies to start your career. The logos are great. Their training is probably great. You're going to meet a lot of great salespeople there. So, if you're getting into tech sales, these companies are a great place to try to go to start your career. So a couple slides here at the end. And I was alluding to this throughout the previous slides, but in my opinion, you're going to get way better training if you go to a big tech company. If you go to a smaller tech company or a startup, they have less resources, they have less staff. There's going to be less senior salespeople, less managers, or fewer managers for you to learn from. Their training program probably isn't going to be as formalized and built out, but these large tech companies that have hundreds of salespeople, even thousands of salespeople in some cases, have very strong training programs. And this is a great way to start your career. You get in, you go through a training program for the first 2 or 3 months, you really learn tech sales. And then that's a foundation you can take with you for the rest of your career. At the end of the day, like the best tech sales company to work for depends on you. Each company is going to be different. Like some companies are going to pay more, but their culture isn't going to be as good. Other companies are going to have really good culture, but they're not going to pay as much. And then there are some companies that seem like they're just too good to be true. They've got really good pay, really good culture, all the benefits you hear about from working in tech. So it's really up to you though, in terms of what you want to prioritize out of those things that are important to you. And I also have a blog post that I'll show you at the very end of this video that'll help you kind of create a list of the things that might be important to you for working at a company, and you can kind of read that blog post for yourself and go through that list. So the last thing I want to do, I want to jump out of the slides here and go through, I want to show you each of those 3 data sources to show you that you can scroll through them on your own, and then I want to show you those 2 blog posts I mentioned. So here is the Bravado list. I'll put this link in the description of the YouTube channel. So you can see we only went through the top 25. So we went up to Dropbox, but you can see this list is much longer than that, like 100. So here's where the numbers stop for some reason. But you can see that this would be, if you were trying to get into tech sales, you have like 200 top companies to apply to here. This is a really great resource from Bravado. Here's the workspace or the data set from Glassdoor. So you can sort by large companies and small and medium companies. I don't know why that's not loading. Oh, there we go. Let's go to large. And so again, like we only show the top 10, but there's a lot more. And there's like Intuit, tech company, Dell is a very old tech company, Workday is a tech company, Salesforce is on here. Interestingly, they're way lower, even though they were higher on other lists. And then Fortune, same thing. You can toggle between large and small and medium. And then there's just way more than the top 10. So these are really good lists if company culture is and other stuff. In order to see how these lists were compiled on each of these web pages, they actually tell you what were the factors that they ranked on in order to determine who ranks highly in this list. So you might want to go look at those to see why are they high on these lists. And then the last two things I'll show, everything I just showed in those slides, I've actually written into a blog post on our blog, breakintotechsales.com. I'll put the link to this in the description of the video as well, especially if you would rather not like keep toggling that little time thing to see when these lists were in the video. You can just go to this blog post and see all the companies in one place. Here are the top 9 overall companies. And then the last thing, I alluded to this on the last slide. We also have this blog post about like what you should think about to choose the right tech sales company for you. It's basically like making a list of these characteristics of a company and going through and saying, okay, you basically rank, is this important to me or is it not? And then you can go through and you can look at those companies, especially with the Bravado list that showed you like work-life balance, quota fairness, stuff like that. And you can really make a decision on which company is going to be specifically right for you based on what you're looking for in your ideal company. So that is it. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said at the beginning, if you're interested in educational resources to help you break into tech sales, definitely go follow our channel and we'll see you at the next video. Thanks, everybody.